How did it come to be that Manchester United are in this state? Well, I kind of want to explore that in this video. And you know what? I'm not even really throwing shade at anyone here. I actually just want to get into how Manchester United made it to this point. They're one of the biggest clubs in the world, if not the biggest club in the world, alongside your Real Madrids and those kind of guys. There are teams that come up and down and kind of, they've got history and those kind of things, and there are teams that are very compelling within certain eras. But Manchester United have always been one of those sides who kind of ride between eras, and even when they are bad, they are still Manchester United. Welcome back to the Lawrence McKenna channel. If you haven't already subscribed, feel free to do so, but at the same time, don't feel you have to now. Do it later when you've watched the video. Lots of people making great content, by the way, about Manchester United and their current struggles. James Lawrence Alcott, love the name, love the man, love the channel. Ten Hag's nightmare new tactic. He's broken down some of the more current stuff and I guess ways that Manchester United are currently trying to deal with A, bit of an injury crisis, B, transitioning some players out. I'll get into some of this, but I'll leave the link for James's stuff down there in the description. Of course, Tifo guy's also doing a great job as well. Why Manchester United keep losing to Brighton. And the keep losing to Brighton thing is kind of the key here. The keep. Do you know what I'm saying? There's a trend going on here. Do you see where the trend came from though? Who are the Glazer family and what is their net worth? A question asked, weirdly, in the Evening Standard, a London-based paper. Maybe there's a copy out in Manchester somewhere, but Manchester United shares suffer worst day. Wow, worst day. Things not looking good in terms of the share price. Does that mean they don't top the league anymore? Turns out share price not immediately indicative of where you are in the league. The share price falls by 18% after media reports that Glazer family want to postpone selling the club. This was about 2 weeks ago, and I'm sure the players out in the field will also weirdly have felt something. Not about the share price, but about where the club is going overall. And that is kind of what I want to talk about here. The Glazer family. What feels like eternal downturn of what is going on at the club. Do you get what I'm saying? Ever since they were bought, and believe me, I'm going to get into this in a second, the share price has been the most important thing to the Glazers, or one of the most important things, because A, you can leverage debt or get more money based on the share price of the club, but B, you can also tell that your overall asset portfolio is increasing in value. Manchester United, of course, bought for a measly sum of, that's right, 790 million in 2005. Just two years before that, although closer to three, two and a bit. The Glazers bought a 2.9% stake in Manchester United for only 9 million. They purchased it through a holding company called Red Football. Of course, that's because their other holdings are also red. They also own the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, also red. And of course, in May 2005, they went on to take some shares of others. But I can get into that again in a second. Why were they taking Manchester United shares? Why is it so important that the Glazers were buying Manchester United and not someone else? Well, let's break this down for a second, right? Manchester United got a head start on everyone else in the Premier League era because guess what? They embraced the culture of the Premier League era. They embraced what was going on in terms of, oh, we can capitalize on the league growth. We can capitalize on, if we invest now, if we plunge money into some of this, if we back a manager, we can get ahead of everyone else. Liverpool were left sleeping. They were the older club that didn't really do that kind of thing. We're the boot room. We're the guys who promote from within. We do things a certain way. Other clubs who were at the top at the time, they got a bit of a head start on them as well. Manchester United were ahead of everyone else, and it put them stratospheric in terms of what they were doing globally, because people watching the league and going, Manchester United are the team to watch. They were new to these new markets as they were being shown not only across Britain more, because more people could tune into more football and see more Manchester United, but they could also just see that Manchester United were being successful on camera. And the visibility of that leads to you being a more valuable team. People want their jerseys with you on it, they want the caps with you on it. The merch era was kind of a thing, similar to Batman was a franchise, the Ninja Turtles was a franchise, Ghostbusters. Things were franchised within this era, and that's kind of like the beginning of that. Football was beginning to get franchised, and Manchester United were very much on the front of the wave of that. Now, some people might say, hey, it's a cynical move towards capitalism, but capitalism has always existed within the game, and you know what? Manchester United were just going where the market was going as well. Other clubs could have done the same. It might not have been Manchester United. Of course, at one point it could have been Blackburn Rovers. It could have been Newcastle. We might have seen Manchester United now being in the position of Newcastle. Other teams like Leeds were trying to keep up. They couldn't keep up with the spending. Liverpool were trying to keep up, but it was only in the early 2000s that Liverpool really, or late 90s, early 2000s, that they really realised they needed to change the system at the club. Everything at Manchester United was quietly innovative. They were weirdly, due to Sir Alex Ferguson being there since 1986? Yeah, 1986, quietly innovative. Because they had a guy who was stoic, they had a guy who was Scottish, they had a guy who was different to the other teams. While Arsenal and Chelsea and Liverpool and those people were building in different ways, Manchester United were building in, surprisingly, the Manchester United way. Now, some of you might be saying, what does that have to do with modern Manchester United? Well, since the Glazers came in, they've had 9 different managers. Technically Sir Alex Ferguson was one of the managers in that era. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 3 of which were interim managers. So, you can't really take those guys as being, a permanent thing, but give it gigs it till end of season is a famous phrase for a reason. And that's partly indicative of what was going on during the Glazer era. Now, some people might say, well, look at all that list of managers that you've got in there. You've got in people who are, not the kind of people you want at Manchester United. You've had David Moyes, you've had Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, you've had Ralf Rangnick. Yeah, but there are other names in there that you've clearly tried to back. David Moyes, don't forget, was the manager that was meant to be jumping up to the next level. And there was somewhat of an issue with that. And partly that was because of, how can I put it? The lack of momentum that the Glazers had caused within the club. But at the same time, let's not get it twisted here. Manchester United have won things since the Glazers came, all right? Some of that was down to the Glazers, some of it different. They won the League Cup double in 08-09. They won the EFL Cup and the Europa League in 16-17. Both of those very different feelings. The EFL and Europa League double kind of feel like who cares, but also Mourinho at the time said it's one of his biggest achievements, getting Manchester United to second and doing these kind of things. And at the same time, the League and EFL Cup double felt like a bit of an anticlimax after the league season before that. They won the League and the UEFA Champions League. So there's ups and downs throughout this era. But weirdly, the Cup double after the League and Champions League double was indicative of where Manchester United were going at the time. And I think Sir Alex Ferguson saw that. I think he was trying to keep them en route. I think he was trying to keep them at least performing relatively consistently and at least competing, even if they weren't actually winning things. In steps David Moyes. By the way, a Sir Alex Ferguson recommendation. So don't even come at me with this, right? The reason I want to go to Brighton over this is, well, it was the weekend. On the weekend, basically, it was just more of an indication of where Manchester United were going. So that's bringing us back to the present day. What I'm saying is they have had some success in that time, but relative to the size of Manchester United, probably not. This right here is a small collection of some of, if not most of the majority of the transfer windows that Manchester United have had. This was the season transfers after the Glazers came in at Manchester United. Vidic came in, Evra came in, Park Ji-sung. These were all fantastic signs. Even Edwin van der Sar. That was basically this one of or part of and expanding the spine of this Manchester United side at the time. Ben Foster, of course, was brought in as head of podcasting, but back then people didn't know so much about podcasts. Thought I was funny, didn't land. Michael Carrick, of course, came in. Good, that was good. By the way, 2 classic, if not 3 classic Manchester United players in there. If you don't know Thomas Kuszek, you missed out on a good era. He was bought from West Brom after a loan. David De Gea, of course, came in. He became pretty consistent within the Manchester United side. Phil Jones was tipped to be one of the great next Manchester United players and England players. Ashley Young at the time, of course, huge amount of money. And at this point, you're seeing a lot of totting up of transfer fees. Anderson at one point came in, Nani, Owen Hargreaves, Carlos Tevez. Again, Thomas Kuszek, because that wasn't to do with a loan. You know what I'm saying? In comes Robin van Persie. That's the season they then go on to win the league. Stuff it up, you Arsenal, is what those guys were saying. Shinji Kagawa. Think about this, right? Kagawa came in. I'm just saying. Dimitar Berbatov, Tosic. People don't remember Richie Delettre? Delattre? Wasn't the Delat you wanted? Anyway, the point is I could go through all of these transfers, right? You got Antonio Valencia, but I think this was the summer that Manchester United basically sold Cristiano Ronaldo, because Ronaldo wanted out of the project, he wanted to go elsewhere, and it was kind of an indication that, well, they've done a lot as Manchester United, but overall he feels like he needs to go somewhere else. Manchester United were at the pinnacle, but you can only take a sideward step to Real Madrid at that point. And that was kind of an issue, right? Bear in mind also, Wayne Rooney came in during this era. They spent a lot of money on Antonio Martial, Juan Mata. I'm going through all of these. Like, I could just keep going. Romelu Lukaku, they spent a huge amount of money. The amount of money spent is almost superfluous to my point, right? Because if you look at it, here we go. Angel Di Maria, Luke Shaw. There are some names in here that I'm saying that are still at the club. Some of the names that you know didn't work. And there was only one summer where they made a profit. It was the sale of a couple of players and Cristiano Ronaldo that really made a difference. But their expenditure that summer, maybe Sir Alex Ferguson felt he could survive without Cristiano Ronaldo. Maybe he thought there wasn't value in the market to replace Cristiano Ronaldo. Maybe Obertan, maybe Bebe, maybe all the players who were coming in as a Carlos Queiroz type player looked promising. But let me tell you now, it's nothing to do with the leaving Cristiano Ronaldo, although that is a symptom of the issue. It's nothing to do with one specific player. It's nothing to do with one specific system. It's to do with the people above that at Manchester United that have been the real issue. And this is somewhat of a rallying cry to Manchester United and other fans. If you're unhappy with your owners, you should be able to voice that. But success is not the only indicator of whether your club is a good club or not. It is not the only indicator of whether your club is on an upward trajectory or a downward trajectory. And time is catching up with Manchester United. Time is catching up and hindering the current project under Erik ten Hag. Players are consistently and chronically injured at Manchester United. Now, that may be down to the signings of some of these players, but also if you can't bring in the best medical staff, if you can't get the best people to work in your industry, if you're constantly changing coaching staff who want to bring in different medical people who, by the way, have their own methods, have how often they want to play, big squads, small squads, their core players, their fringe players. You're constantly constricting, contracting, and growing the squad within different visions. Louis van Gaal wanted a number of centre-backs with a left foot. Jose Mourinho wanted a number of players who played in certain positions and tried to maximise them. They never quite invested in him. They got Harry Maguire. That's not even the transfer that I've even listed on here. I don't think so anyway. Yeah, I don't think Harry Maguire's on any of these. Chris Smalling came in. Chicharito. These were players who... Paul Pogba for 105 million euros. Pogback was like the thing. Pogback was even more of a thing. You get a feeling that Manchester United, they only had a couple of hits within there. And what I'm saying is and obviously within that time I've been very critical of Manchester United. And, some of that was funny to me because I'm a Liverpool fan. But some of that was also just winding up mates and wanting to wind, since I was a kid, obviously I've had loads of mates who've been Manchester United fans. So it's fun to wind those kind of people up. But Manchester United have very consistently managed a level of decline through poor investment, through a lack of vision, through basically bringing in different managers who don't fit the vision of the club. Now, this is not me saying that therefore Erik ten Hag does not fit the overall vision of the club. In fact, I think he has his own vision, and I think it's very cohesive with a lot of other modern managers. But what he's being forced to do now, and what is being said in these fantastic videos here with James and with Tifo, and with all of these diamonds being laid out and the way that Manchester United get beaten, look at that in terms of personnel. James has laid it out beautifully for us, right? Lindelof, Martinez, Reguilon, Dalot, Onana. If I say any of those names in that back line, you can think of an issue, a missing player, or a long-term growth problem at Manchester United attached to one of those players, if not all of those players, as a unit and individually. Casemiro, Eriksen, McTominay, Fernandes, Rashford, Højlund. The only player that you don't think of, and even then with Højlund, look, let's play just a quick exercise. Onana, brought in as a goalkeeper that suits the vision of Erik ten Hag, but ultimately hasn't been able to stop the chronic issues in Manchester United's backline because he's not the kind of leader that fits in with a backline that is leaky as such. Martinez, constantly under criticism and under an ire after people said he was too short when he first came in the Premier League. That wasn't the thing you should be looking at. You should be looking at how he partners his other centre-backs, sometimes his positioning, sometimes his distribution. Is he allowed to play the role that he needs to play within an Erik ten Hag side in order to get the best out of him? No. Why? Because he is alongside inconsistent fullbacks and an inconsistent centre-back partner. Lindelof, a fantastic player, bought for 35 million euros from Benfica. Someone at the time I worried about when he first came in. It was like, oh, they've got someone for the next decade. Diogo Dalot, a fantastic player, but not what Manchester United realistically are looking at wanting. Casemiro, a waning, aging player within the side who should have been bought in as a expensive but brilliant stopgap within that time, is now Manchester United's main hope of defending on the counter-attack. Eriksen, a player, again, who should have been a stopgap, is a fantastic technician, but ultimately, if you'd bought properly this summer, you would have moved him on. McTominay, there was clearly an agenda to move him on this summer, in the same way as there was with Harry Maguire. I'm reminded so consistently, and I mean this, so consistently, of the AVB era at Chelsea. And it's not just the AVB era, it's other eras beyond that, right? Where managers had to come in and compete within a difficult environment in order to maximize that squad. Now you might go, well, Ten Hag's very different to AVB. In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. If you have a manager who's not been backed, if you have a manager who players know is relatively weak, then you will not get what you need out of those players. Fernandes, a captain of a team who realistically is a fantastic player, but do you really want him backed by Erik Ten Hag? Should he have to be the captain of the side? No. Rashford, constantly lacking service, constantly pushed out to a position he probably doesn't quite want to be in. Højlund, the reason he was brought in and was a great, as the phrase goes, great white hope, it's nothing to do with race, is a fantastic player and has done really well so far for Manchester United, but realistically, should he be the hope? I remember as a Liverpool fan going back to the 90s and going, hey, Robbie Fowler's really good, McManaman's really good. What I'm saying is, Erik Ten Hag is being forced to play a series of systems which do not serve the kind of football that he wants to play and is not indicative of where he wants to take the squad. Why? Because he has injuries, because he has to make compromises almost constantly when he should be making compromises within his own rules, within his own ideas, and he's been forced there by the Glazers, who are too piecemeal, who are too scattergun, who don't seem to have an overall cohesive vision for the club because even they can't decide whether they want to be there or not. They can't have a public cohesive vision because they can't deal with things like Greenwood. They don't have a public vision because they can't deal with things like Maguire, with players saying things on social media, with Sancho still in the dressing room, with Maguire still in the dressing room, with a series of players still in the dressing room who will not be happy with the way that Erik Ten Hag has dealt with them. That is not Erik Ten Hag's fault. Why should he have to suffer through this era? Now I get it, they could probably play better football and there are plenty of managers and their Brighton logo is there for a reason because there are other managers who make the best of the situations that they are in. But with the goals at Manchester United, with the way that you try and motivate players, you cannot just go in there and go, let's go and win a game. As much as that might want to be what Manchester United want right now, it's got to be about the overall vision at Manchester United because this is such a big project. You can't go into a big project and go, let's just do a little thing and that'll be all right. Now, I get it. People go, oh, it's step by step, you take it game by game, whatever it is. Sure, I understand that. But that cannot be, again, hand to mouth the way that Manchester United are living right now. So go with me on this. If you're a Liverpool fan, if you're a Spurs fan, if you're a Manchester United fan, if you're a Man City fan, you should be looking at this and saying, this is terrible for my club. City fans, you might be here in a few years' time if your club does not plan properly. Liverpool fans, you might be here in a few years' time if your club is mismanaged serially. The same with Chelsea. They were serially mismanaged for years and sleepwalked into the situation that they are now. Now, within that, there are many different factors. But broadly, what you would say is Manchester United is being undermined very consistently out in the field because of the behind-the-scenes stuff. You can look through all these transfers, you can look through all of the tactics that are put down there, and you can see it's clear as day. The Manchester United owners, at the moment, are mismanaging this club. And that's not for me to say, they're terrible people. I'm not saying any of that. But any time, and this is the final thing I'll say on this, which I think illustrates my point really well, Manchester United have consistently gone into the red in summers. And people will look at transfer fees and go, oh, but they're spending money. Look at the wages, look at the project, look at whether players want to go to that club or not. Look at whether the players know there's long-term stability or not. Look at what City are doing in terms of long-term stability, wages, etc. It's the opposite of what Manchester United are doing. Sure, they trimmed some with Erik Ten Hag. Sure, there is a change at the club. And, that is going on. That is within flux. Things are changing right now. But Manchester United, as a team, are not cohesive. Despite going to the red every summer, the Glazers still took profit from this club over that time, to the tune of multi-millions, close to the billions, and they will take more out. So the transfer money is not the issue here. The overall cohesive vision of the club is, and at the moment, from the top down, that is not there. Erik ten Hag should be staying at the club. Erik ten Hag should be trusted with the transfer kitty. Erik ten Hag deserves longer. He's struggling in this situation because of the long-term lack of vision from Manchester United as an institution. I hope you guys agree. I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. Go vent there. Go chat to me because I will make more videos on this. I hope you guys are having a good evening. I'll chat to you later, or a good day, good night, whatever it is. See you later.